Wake that ass up.
Early in the morning.
The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ Envy, Angela Yee, Charlamagne the God. We are the Breakfast Club. We got a special guest in the building. She is the first female president of Benedict College, celebrating the university's 150th anniversary. Benedict's in South Carolina, correct?
Yes, it is. Columbia 803.
Dr. Roslyn. Dr.
Yes,
Roslyn.
Roslyn.
Artis, welcome.
Good morning.
Thank you. It's great
That
to
guy
be
right
here.
there, he's a Benedict alumni with his head down.
Uh-huh.
He graduated from Benedict.
Oh, great.
Yeah, with a business degree.
I have to holler at him
Wax.
on the way.
Okay.
Wow, I don't know if that speaks volumes, but
Don't let her disrespect your school like that.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying?
I just disrespected Wax, really.
That man got a 200-acre chicken farm.
That's right, yeah.
There's
Yes.
money in chicken.
Yes, it is.
Definitely money in
Yes,
chicken.
it is.
Remind me to ask
Now
you
let's
for a
talk about
gift.
Benedict College a little bit.
Yes.
Now, how is it being the president for Benedict?
Amazing experience.
Mm-hmm.
An amazing experience. My students are amazing. 2,100 kids. I affectionately refer to them as my children, so I am old Mother Hubbard of 2,100.
Why do you think it took so long for the college to appoint a female president?
Well, I think it's not uncommon in the HBCU space. There are only 108 women in the history of the world to serve as an HBCU president, if you think about that. 103 HBCUs, 25% are on their first female, 35% have never had a female. We do tend to be somewhat sexist in the space. And so though we were founded by a woman, it took 147 years to decide to trust the institution.
Yeah, isn't the
Wow.
first HBCU ever in America founded by a woman? Am I tripping?
No. Several have been founded by women as well. Voorhees, for example, in South Carolina was founded by a woman. It is named for her.
And Madam C.J. Walker founded
And Mary McLeod Bethune.
Bethune-Cookman.
Yes,
Bethune-Cookman.
yes.
Yeah.
So let's talk about, why students should go to a HBCU, why you find it necessary. Of course, I went to the best HBCU ever.
Yes, I
Hampton
see.
University, I don't know if you've seen that, but
I
the
see that.
real HU is right there.
But your
let's-
head turned before you did. That was wild just
Shut up,
now,
man,
bro.
my head is-
I'm serious.
Shut up, man.
That was wild.
Shut up.
Your toupee went this way before you even
It's not a
turned around.
toupee. This is
That's
real hair.
crazy.
I said HBCUs, we have real hair. But now, continue. Why should students go to HBCU or even consider a HBCU?
So I think it's critically important for our students to find their sense of self, to understand who they are and how they fit into a world that doesn't always appreciate people of color. Our students will learn, of course, English, math, engineering, the variety of subjects that are offered at every institution, but they'll do it in a culturally sensitive environment that is designed just for them. And I think there's great value in that. Our students tend to perform exceedingly well in graduate school. Our students are very successful. You've seen the studies where our students demonstrate a better quality of life, lifelong bonds and connections with their classmates and friends. It is a holistic experience for Black people. And if you think about all of the institutions that really anchor the Black community, the churches. Our kids say things like, I'm spiritual, not religious.
Yep.
Right? I mean, we're losing that. Our schools, K-12 education, when we integrated, we moved schools out of our communities. Those were gathering places for people of color. So in my view, HBCUs are the last place on earth where Black people gather for a common positive purpose.
How does it make you feel when, I'm sorry, how does it make you feel when you see like a lot of these NBA players, athletes, and they pass over HBCUs and they go to some of these other colleges and universities where it feels like maybe they should keep it home, maybe they should, I just think how much it would change an HBCU if somebody like Zion went to a HBCU,
Sure.
or if LeBron went to a HBCU instead of going straight to college, to the league instead of high school.
So there's no question that it would be tremendously impactful to have those caliber athletes at HBCUs. But the reality is, unfortunately, the ability for them to have the visibility that they have with those D1 programs that are televised, that have marketing rights, things of that sort, I don't judge. Right? Those guys are trying to be seen, discovered, and make it to the NBA. And so while we would love to have them, and
If
it would
Zion
certainly...
went to Benedict, they would come to Benedict to film.
I love Benedict. I love
with
all
you
of
on that.
HBCUs, but they don't have. They also don't have the resources sometimes.
That's
when it comes
absolutely
to them
true.
just being the best athlete that they could be.
That's absolutely true. We were having some of those conversations yesterday in terms of think about facilities. I stand by the proposition that my students deserve everything that the PWI student deserves, right? So when we talk about bowling alleys, movie theaters, workout facilities, things of that sort, people will say, well, that's not, critical to the educational experience. No, it's not. But the other kids have it. why don't my kids deserve those very same amenities that kids who would attend a PWI have? So the ability to keep pace in this nuclear arms race for facilities, amenities, really is a critical issue for HBCUs.
Now, for you personally, Dr. Roslyn Clark Artis, how did you come into the position that you're in? What was your path to being the president of Benedict?
So interestingly, I started a career as a lawyer. Had no thought or interest in higher education at all. Practiced law for 10 years, civil litigation work. A friend asked me to teach an adjunct class in legal research and writing at the local college. I did that. And what was so amazing about that experience is I was living in southern West Virginia. I don't know if you all have traveled to the great state of West Virginia.
I have. I love Tutors. Tutors Biscuit World, baby. Tutors is banging.
It is there. And it's a 3% state, 3% minority state. So I was actually the only black female attorney in the city. And so when I taught the class, a young lady came up to me at the end of the 16 weeks, left me a note that said, "You changed my life." And when I talked to her, she said, "I was planning to be a paralegal. I didn't even know black people could be lawyers."
Wow.
And so this notion that, generally lawyers are the butt of the bad joke, right? But this idea that you could change someone's life was pretty intoxicating to me. So I continued doing more and more teaching and ultimately resigned my practice at the firm, went back to school to earn a doctorate because, the sort of statement in higher education is that the JD and the MD are professional doctorates. They're not earned doctorates, as though they give those away for Christmas. So I went back to school at Vanderbilt and earned a doctorate and then came back into higher education as a director, vice president, provost, and then a president.
Wow.
What do HBCUs need most right now?
Money.
Money.
Yeah. And good PR. So I'm on the Breakfast Club, right? I mean, money and good PR. The reality is we have a very bad habit of saying it's just an HBCU. Bite your tongue. Just an HBCU? You mean the HBCUs that bore the black middle class? You mean the HBCUs that built this country? You mean the HBCUs that educated the vast majority of doctors, lawyers, engineers, and teachers of color in this country, that still produce the majority of black people with degrees in this country? So we must stop speaking of ourselves in diminutive terms. We are giants in the higher education ecosystem. And this country, quite frankly, is becoming browner. And you can't reach your higher education goals without me.
And I wonder why people don't like to give to HBCUs. Because I gave to an HBCU last year. My mom was alma mater.
Yes, you did. Thank you.
But the only reason I even made that public is because of what you just said. People don't like to give to HBCUs, and if they do, they want to keep it quiet for whatever reason.
Well, to MB's point about what would it do if some of these athletes came to our institutions, what would it do if some of these people gave money to these institutions, right? Invested in these institutions? What you did at South Carolina State was huge. I meant to bring my copy of HBCU Times magazine. You're on the cover because of the gift that you made.
I need to post
that. Yes, you do. You are
I
on the cover of the magazine in a South Carolina State sweatshirt. I bought you a Benedict shirt if you'd like to rep a winner, but whatever. I think people have not seen us as an investment. This notion that we think white, we think green, we think black, we think red. Black people do have financial acumen. We do know how to invest resources. MB, right? We do know how to make money, and this notion that if it's white, it's right, and we really have to stop that.
We swear white ice is colder.
And it probably is at white schools because they can afford ice machines and I can't. So if you gave me some money, right, we would have cold ice too.
Now, let's talk about the curriculum a little bit. Now, do you think the curriculum needs to be changed? I did my run, my HBCU run when my daughter wanted to go to college. When she was going to college, I started at Morgan and drove up all the way to Howard, to Hampton, to North Carolina, to Atlanta. I did my run. But, a lot of the things that she was trying to get into, they didn't really have that too many times as a major.
Sure.
Like it was real estate. She wanted to get into real estate. And a lot of the schools we were looking at really didn't have that as a major and really didn't have too many classes for that. Do we need to change the curriculum at some of these HBCUs?
We need to reevaluate the curriculum. So at Benedict College, I took a somewhat unpopular position. We sunset about 7 majors. So we stopped offering certain things because the reality is for kids of color in this country, we do not pursue education for education's sake. We pursue education to go get a job. They have to. Their communities are depending on them, their families are depending on them, and their student loans come due. So they have to be able to be employed. So when you think about, we were training folks in sociology and religion and philosophy, admirable, laudable majors. But when you look at the employment prospects for those kids, they're not there. So Benedict pulled back on some of those majors.
Like what?
Religion and philosophy, sociology, political science. We have public administration now, slightly different, but and really double down on things like cybersecurity engineering, places where our students can get jobs. We looked at the South Carolina economy. We're a manufacturing economy. Right? It's not dirty smokestacks. It's high-tech manufacturing in South Carolina. And so logistics and supply chain is a big deal. That port in Charleston is a big deal. So
it's a Google plant at Monk's Corner.
Yes. We had to have sort of what I call honest family conversations about what we do well, about what we don't do well, and maybe break ranks on some of the traditional majors that we have and admit that perhaps they're not the most effective majors for students going into 21st century jobs. And so you can imagine that made me wildly popular. But my polar star is these kids and making sure they have a fair shot.
It's a small thing to do. I feel like a lot of times at HBCUs, we teach, like you said, these students how to be workers, how to be worker bees, and not enough entrepreneurs.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what we need to change some of these curriculums to.
Well, we're with you at Benedict. We're doing some really interesting work in that space. We have a business incubator. We have a number of students for whom money is tight, and so they have side gigs. They have side hustles, right? All of our kids, they're doing nails, they're doing hair. I had a student who customizes sneakers, right? Painting shoes, all sorts of interesting things they're doing. And so what we're doing is pulling them out and saying, hey, let's see if we can turn that hot side hustle into a business, a thriving, growing business, giving them technical assistance and support. How do you attract capital? How do you develop a business plan? How do you create a marketing plan? How do you scale up? And so placing them in that incubator. We have a salon on campus that's a lot nicer than where I get my hair done, right? To help them see how to run a business while they're students. The goal is not just to teach them to get a job, but to create jobs and reinvest in our economy. So I'm excited about the work we're doing around entrepreneurship.
And what about the alumni network at Benedict College? Because I know that's so important. People who have graduated, they can reach back and say, okay, we have internships available or opportunities available once you graduate. We went to the same school. So how is that as a resource?
A tremendous resource at Benedict. Benedict alumni are absolutely amazing. We have about 18,000. They're also generous. We talk about giving. Benedict alums have exceeded the $1 million mark for the last 5 years running, which proportionally, when you think about HBCUs, we're talking about an 19% give rate, producing about last year almost $1.5 million, where we see other institutions bragging about just hitting the $1 million mark, and they have 50,000 alumni. So pound for pound, my alumni are incredibly generous. They are also engaged, right? So we're talking to them about mentoring our students, role modeling, giving lectures, hiring them. If you have an internship, think Benedict First. Come to your own, right? Think about Benedict First.
That's something that I always promote. People talk about college. Is college necessary? But I think with you having that college education also comes access to that alumni network that you should tap into when you are looking for investors or opportunities or apprenticeships or whatever it is that you need. Make sure you look for the alumni.
Well, and it's certainly what I ask of my alumni is to be visible, right? My students need to see what they can be. They need to see what a Benedict education will buy for them in this marketplace, and and how they can be successful. Listen, I can come to the Breakfast Club and run into a Benedict alum. We're everywhere, right? They're making impact in every area of human endeavor. And so my students need to have that additional motivation. While they're thinking about their loan payment, while they're busy, trying to eat in the cafeteria, they need to think it's all for a purpose, right? I'm going someplace. There is an end game here.
How do you make personal connections with the students to ensure their academic success being the president?
So I have a tremendous advantage. We're small. We're about 2,100 students, and so I get to know their names, right? They email me. Social media is an amazing thing. It is both a blessing and a curse. I'm incredibly accessible. My kids hit me up on Messenger. They DM me. When they have an issue, I didn't like what they served in the cafeteria. They ran out of chicken. That'll cause a riot. Listen, that'll cause a riot. That will cause a riot on a campus. I need to talk to him about it. But they also will reach out to me when they win, right? When a student gets an internship, when a student wins an award. I had 2 students win a science competition last week, and, they reached out on social media and said, hey, Doc, we did it. So those personal connections are critically important, particularly as a female. 67% of HBCU students in America are Black women. Why don't they deserve role models too? Well, I have people come to me all the time and say, oh my God, I want to be there, which is amazing. Yeah. It's an amazing feeling.
And necessary.
People complain that the only HBCUs that get attention when it comes to funding are the Howards, the Spelmans, the Morehouses. That's true.
You can say Hampton.
Hampton don't get no money.
Yeah, you can say Hampton.
certainly, we are seeing historic investments at Morehouse College, for example, and we're proud of them and happy for them. Listen, I would have rather you wrote the check to Benedict, but I was happy for South Carolina State.
That's my mom's alma mater.
Listen, when one HBCU wins, we all win. So if Morehouse is winning, we're winning, right, as a sector. And so it's important for us to not be divisive or competitive, but rather to celebrate the successes that occur at other HBCUs. However, to overlook the other 95 who are doing really good work, producing really strong graduates. Benedict's in its 150th birthday celebration. And as we look back at the contributions that have been made by Benedict alumni, Septima Clark, the mother of the civil rights movement, designated as such by Martin Luther King. We didn't just make that up, right? That's not our talk point. She traveled with him to Oslo to receive the Nobel Peace Prize. I mean, you had female generals in the civil rights movement, right? Nash in Tennessee, Clark in South Carolina. She came out of Benedict. So this notion that only the Big Five, right? Howard, Hampton, Morehouse, Spelman, produce
Is Hampton
quality
really in
graduates.
the Big Five?
Yeah, because Harvey's in the Big Five. I mean,
He don't know about Harvey.
You got to give credit where credit's due.
He don't know about Harvey and what he's done and turned that place around.
Now he
He's the
should watch
president.
his back though, because I'm coming.
He
Should watch his back.
Healthy
I'm
competition
not
here.
If you was the president of Harvard, how would you have handled that whole coronavirus thing? Because they're making kids pack up and leave. They got to be out by 5 p.m. on Sunday.
Yeah, we're having conversations about that, as you might imagine, at Benedict College as well. I think the timing is a challenge. What we're trying to do is think very, very carefully. As you might imagine, I have a population of students who are low-wealth, first-generation kids of color. They can't buy a plane ticket on 24 hours' notice. They cannot move quickly. I have 90 international students. Some of their countries may not even let them come back at this point. So we have to be very thoughtful. I am confident Howard, because to us that's a little more important than Harvard. But Harvard certainly has a population of students that are largely high net worth individuals and so have the ability to move a little quicker. But you saw some of the rioting in Dayton, for example, when the college gave them 12 to 15 hours to evacuate. They cannot move that quickly. Right. They're place bound and they're financially constrained. So we have to be smart and thoughtful. A lot of schools are going entirely online. Well, that's great, except, again, I have a low wealth first gen population of students, 20-25% of whom probably don't have Wi-Fi at home, right? The digital divide is real in these environments. And so I could make a cavalier decision today, we're just going to take it online, but I have to think about that kid who does not have a laptop, who does not have Wi-Fi at their house as we make these decisions. So Harvard has a little more flexibility than I do because their students don't have the same needs that my students
Although
have.
not all of them, because there are some students who financially aren't able to
Sure.
travel.
Shouldn't the school be helping them, though? All that money that school makes?
Harvard should, yes.
Yeah.
Given the value of their
Howard,
endowment,
no.
probably. That's right. I think it is a very different conversation. I have been in conversation with my colleagues, my HBCU colleagues, because, again, we're thinking about what if a kid doesn't have Wi-Fi?
Right.
They're not having that conversation at Harvard. Right? What if a kid doesn't have a laptop? They don't have to think about that. Mm-hmm. What if a parent says, don't bring that here, your grandma's sick? I mean, what happens to a kid who can't go home for those reasons? And so we really have to be more thoughtful and slow down a little bit. We have a slight advantage at Benedict. We're on spring break this week.
Oh, okay. So you have a little bit of time.
It has given me, yes, a little bit of buffer. Certainly I have 400 or 500 students who chose to remain. They may have internships. They may be international. So we do have some kids on campus. But the fact that we're on spring break has afforded me the luxury of thought time.
What are some options then?
As of probably about an hour from now, we will declare an extended spring break. So we will take another week. And to be very candid, we followed University of South Carolina. They have obviously thought through that very carefully as well. And so while we do not want to panic and call off the semester, close down, those kinds of things, we do want to be thoughtful. I have elderly faculty. I have elderly staff who could be exposed. And so we have to think about all of those constituents. And so taking another week, extending spring break, my faculty will report back midweek so they can give some thought to how to make up that instructional time. Because at the end of the day, my kids are here for an education, right? I mean, while spring break may be, they're kind of like, yay, another week. that's a week of class that we need to
You
figure
gotta
out how to
still make
make
that
up
up.
to ensure those kids are ready when they get out. And we got seniors. You can imagine, I mean, people are talking about canceling commencements right now. Now, in the Black community,
That's everything.
people have waited generations
Damn right.
to see these babies walk across the stage. And so when you start talking about canceling commencements or having a graduate-only commencement, right? I mean, you heard what LeBron said about it, right? So the same is true for our graduates. They're not there for themselves. They're representing the family, the
absolutely.
generation, the race. I mean, graduations at HBCUs are epic, right? You know that. They bring 29 people. We have to have ours in a football stadium because if we had it in an indoor venue, you'd have to limit the number of tickets. And we know this is a multi-generational event for commencement. So, we're going to take another week, extend spring break, and try to be as thoughtful and careful about that decision-making as we can.
Why do you think attendance is low for HBCUs? Because I hear every year the attendance gets lower and lower and lower with students coming in. Why do you think that is?
So a couple of reasons. The first is, the ice is colder. HBCUs produced the Black middle class in this country, and many then who earned a little money chose to send their kids to what they thought were good schools, white schools. So you saw that fluctuation. You also see the financial challenges. The reality is I don't have an endowment sufficient to scholarship kids at a level where if a white school is competing with me, and we're about to see that. I mean, make no mistake about it, everybody's having conferences and conversations about recruiting Black and brown children.
Yep.
Those are our children,
Yep.
right? And so historically, you didn't want them. But now all of a sudden, right, as we see population demographics shifting, white people are not producing quite at the levels of Hispanic and perhaps Black people. So you're seeing suddenly this new focus at PWIs on recruiting Black and brown students. They're going to be competing with us pound for pound, dollar for dollar, with scholarships behind them, recruiting our students away. They've always come for the top 10%. Now I think that competition will escalate. And then third, it's the stuff, right? If you tour my campus and look at my gymnasium, and you tour a PWI campus and look at their gymnasium, our kids want stuff too. They don't want barracks. They want private bathrooms. They don't want to live in quads, 4 to a room. They want to live in a private, right, a suite with a common area. And so it's those amenities, it's that curb appeal that our historic institutions probably do not have to
And that's
the same
crazy,
extent.
and I understand why. Because when we went to look at Spelman last year, I remember the Spelman, the freshman dorm, first of all, didn't have air conditioning, and it was.
But neither does Duke, and nobody cares.
Yeah, no.
My son toured Duke, and the freshman dorms don't have AC, and it's a
We
badge
didn't
of
have
honor
AC in
to
college
survive.
either.
But
Right.
yeah, that was 20 years ago. Like you figure 20 years ago, you understand. Like I was in
Duke
James
don't have
Hall.
air conditioning?
We didn't have
Not
air
freshman
conditioning.
dorm.
But now those dorms in Hampton, they have it now. It's been 15 years later.
Hey, get a
20 years
fan.
later. Nah, but it just, but for a student, but for a young
Builds
girl that wants to go to HBCU, she's like, there's no air conditioner. There's 10 girls to a bathroom. And then you go to some of these other schools and it's like, it's only 2 girls to a bathroom. It's
Right.
like, these are the things that these kids think about now.
It's got to be something that outweighs the amenities, though, right?
There is in the long game,
Yeah.
right? And so think about, again, the quality of life. HBCU graduates will tell you, right? And looking back, I'm so glad.
I
went
mean,
to
I
an
loved
HBCU.
it, but I didn't have much more than that. Like, it's not like,
I came into an HBCU accidentally, right?
I was forced.
They gave me the best scholarship, and so I went to an HBCU, and I'm so grateful.
You about to say, I'm so goddamn proud I went.
Kinda. Can I say that? I mean, my HBCU experience, and it's not just a talk point, right? Made me who I am.
Absolutely.
And so I, went to law school at the state flagship. I went to a baby Ivy for my doctorate. But it's my HBCU that really built me and strengthened me to be able to do some other things. And so in the long game, you can look back and say, I'm glad I went to an HBCU, right? But for a kid who's price sensitive, low wealth, has had cable amenities, a cell, whatever, surround sound at home, to have to now move into an environment where they're sharing spaces, public spaces, is very difficult. And, that's the other thing that I think is,
crazy.
as we go through this election, so think about this conversation around free community college. Now, free. We all like free 99, right? We all want to think about going free. And we think, that's going to be tremendous for us. No. Think about, it's well-intended, it's a good idea, free is good, but there's a back end to that nobody's thinking about. And that is, you are going to, by default, force poor people to go to community college. So if you are poor in this country, you go to trade school. If you can afford a 4-year degree, you go to a 4-year school. And so people will say, oh, well, just go get that free 2 years and then transfer. But we know statistically students who go to a community college first are 7 times less likely to ever complete that 4-year degree. So by default, by offering it free, you are going to be channeling poor people to trade school and wealthy people to 4-year colleges.
What's wrong with trade school now? Because I'm one of those
Nothing.
people who
you
think
can make good money.
Yeah, I think they should do free trade school for black and brown kids.
Listen, I'm not sure that I disagree with that, except that then you should make HBCUs free too. I mean, the reality is what you want is for kids to have choices.
Right.
I am not here to
like
say
this is the only choice 'cause
every
I don't have-
person of color should go to HBCU, right? You fly. Did you go to HBCU? I mean, like,
I went to
you know,
Roslyn
everybody
University.
doesn't have to go to an HBCU to find, right, to tap that piece of themselves. And yet, it should be an option for those who want it.
Right.
If I want to go pursue a liberal arts degree at a private institution, I should be able to do that. If I want to go learn to be a brick mason and make good money,
Yes.
right, I should be able to do that. But if poverty makes that decision for you, if it's not your life stream, your ambition to do that, but out of necessity
Your
because
parents are
you
like,
don't
you are
have
going to this community
you going
college
where's
or this
free.
trade school because we don't have money to send you.
Listen, I got accepted into every school I applied to, but free, right, at my HBCU, that scholarship they offered me, that was a non-negotiable. My daddy was a coal miner. There was no college fund for me. You going here. Thank God, in retrospect, that he did.
It worked
But
out.
it could have gone different, right?
I would love to see some of the HBCUs like adopt more of the trade school classes. Like I think trade school is so good. I don't think we put enough emphasis on trade school anymore. Like kids need to learn how to use their hands. Like plumbers, electricians, brick masons. They always get work.
I'm so glad you stopped short of saying home ec and cooking, though, because I'm about tired of that conversation as a woman. I'm just joking. But I think you have to be careful with that because trade schools are trade schools, right? I mean, the community colleges do an exceptional job in that space. Perhaps, and we have some that are black, right? We have Denmark Tech. We have some 2-year schools that are HBCUs. But this notion that we should be doing that work as HBCUs. Like, how much can we do and do well based on limited resources? If we are a 4-year college or a university, for us to extend our mission to include trade school probably stretches our already thin resources. And there is a social cost to that, right? So I served as president of Florida Memorial in Miami prior to coming to Benedict. We had aviation there. Right, we teach babies to fly at Florida Memorial. Right, that's huge. I got to say all over the place. Like we put black kids in cockpits and control towers. But I was frequently solicited by the airline industry or the airports to train mechanics. Why don't you add an airplane mechanic program? Why don't you add a Yes, but we're a university, and I'm putting kids in the cockpit.
That's right. We actually just had a program up here the other day that they run out of New York, where they take kids from what age did they start them? Like as young as 8 years old,
they
and
can
start teaching them how to fly.
They can start as young as 3, but the class is 8 years old. They teach young kids how to fly.
Well, we know that early exposure is important.
Black and brown children.
Yes.
And I was saying, when I go into planes, I don't think I've ever seen a black woman flying a plane ever on a flight.
I've seen it once.
I fly a lot.
And she probably went to Florida Memorial or Del State or any one of the HBCUs that's doing aviation.
But you think about how inspirational that is when a young person can come on the flight and see a black or brown person flying that plane, because it's very rare.
It absolutely is.
We
can't act like those aviation mechanics don't make a lot of money.
No, but again, you have Miami-Dade College that does that.
Gotcha.
To suggest that Florida Memorial ought to do everything from grounds crew and mechanics to high-level air traffic control on very limited resources, I mean, it's a stretch.
I get it. The only reason I was talking about adding it is because for the people who don't want to go to college because they want to go to trade school just because they know they can get a job and make the money immediately, it would help them. You know, it might be more of a enticer to go to a HBCU knowing that they offer a trade as well.
Yeah. It's interesting. There's been a national conversation around HBCUs. There's no question about that. People are talking HBCU now for the first time in a long time. And so we're seeing, for example, the military. So we're penetrating the military in a fairly significant way at Benedict. I mean, we have Fort Jackson just down the street. Yep. And, South Carolina State has a long history of producing generals as well. And so we're seeing folks who perhaps did not have the opportunity to go to college, went into the military, but they want an HBCU experience too. right? They want to take classes at an HBCU and say, I graduated from an HBCU. It's now become a thing, right? And we're good with that. We're totally good with the notion that people are finally seeing the relative value of historically black colleges and want that experience.
Well, we appreciate you.
I would talk about Benedict because didn't they lost their accreditation, right?
No.
They didn't?
No, no, sir.
Oh.
No,
No,
sir.
That you so
No,
crazy.
sir.
Like, what?
No, ma'am.
No, sir.
I saw that on the paper. I'm like, they didn't.
No. So we obviously very often will be confused with Bennett in North Carolina.
Bennett.
We are
They lost their
Benedict in
accreditation.
South Carolina.
Don't play me, Negro.
Listen,
Absolutely
it
not.
happens. It happens a lot. Single sex, co-ed. North Carolina, South Carolina, we're not the same institution.
Gotcha.
However, that does not necessarily mean that Bennett is not a high quality institution. So I want to be very clear about that. While I'm going to draw the distinction because I don't want people to mistake or confuse the institutions, I do not do that as a shot at Bennett, because at the end of the day, their challenges with their accreditation are solely a function of money.
Money, yeah.
It's a high quality institution producing young black women who are going out and changing the world, and solely because of money.
Yeah, because when I see they lost their accreditation because of financial instability,
Right.
I'm like, the only way to keep them financially safe is us.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
And of course, you saw the history-making fundraising effort at Bennett. The question is, can that be sustained, right? If you can raise almost $10 million in a couple of months,
Wow.
why is that so hard? I mean, think about the buying power of the black community. I mean, you know this, right? The buying power of the black community. We put our money in things that matter to us. Look, I like Fresh Days too, but I think education has a longer shelf life, right? If I'm going to invest my limited resources in something, education of black children has to be our first priority as a people. We are fraternities and sororities. Look what the AKAs did. I mean, raising millions of dollars in a couple of days. If the other 8 of the Divine Nine followed that, and I'm a Delta, right? So if we got in line and did the same thing, if all of our black organizations who profess to love HBCUs, whether the Boulets, the Links, Jack and Jill, I mean, think about all of these organizations that are the backbone of the black community. If they made a concerted effort and said, we are going to strengthen our HBCUs and put our money where our mouth is, what would happen? It would be an amazing renaissance for HBCUs in this country.
And I feel stupid because I donated to Bennett when they was going through that last year.
You shouldn't, because certainly they still needed it, right?
Yeah.
And they still are open, and they're pursuing an alternative accreditation right now, and young ladies are on that campus getting a good education because of you.
And I think also what we need to do is talk about it more. Talk about the HBCU Wars and the people that attended HBCUs and what the work that they're doing now.
Yeah.
Because all these other colleges, whether it's Harvard, whether it's Duke, whether it's LSU, they all talk about
They lean on their
schools.
alumni.
So we
Yeah.
should talk about, these HBCUs a lot more.
Yeah. And while we have healthy competition, right? The real HU versus, what I keep confusing, Harvard, Howard, what's the real difference, right? But, we don't compete, right? I am so happy for South Carolina State.
Right.
I am cheering for Bennett every day. We have to support one another. We have to speak power over one another. We have to speak life over these institutions. We are a family. As
Absolutely.
HBCUs.
At one point, Envy, you even said that Howard was better than Hampton, remember?
I said that for a hot minute, and the only reason I said that
that's it.
was
That's
because somebody
no
from
explanation
Howard
necessary.
donated $250,000 to the Thurgood Marshall Fund, which helps students go to HBCUs. Right. So when he donated that much, I said for this
say
minute.
His name. His name was Chadwick Boseman.
I was about to.
I'm about to say.
Chadwick,
say that first before you say how much I get.
No, Chadwick Boseman donated. He went to Howard. So I said for that minute, Howard was better than Hampton. And then when that minute was over, Hampton's back on top. But I think we need to compete more. And I think with the competition, I think it brings out rivalries. It brings out people wanting to really rep their schools.
Yeah.
Like I say it all the time, like just to imagine homecoming, and it's Howard versus Hampton at homecoming. Yeah. The amount of people talking about it, people wanting to see and having a good time. Because it's not real beef. Like me and AJ and Chadwick and Anthony Anderson don't beef, but it's just fun to talk about, That's
when we raised the money for Thurgood Marshall College Fund last year, that was the thing. Like, Charlamagne gave $250,000. What you gonna give?
Right.
So now you put pressure on those celebrities and athletes and whoever else to drop that bag.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining us. We really appreciate it.
It's my honor and privilege. Thanks for having me.
And if we could ever come to the school and talk to the students, I mean, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I would definitely love to.
You have an open invitation. Come teach my babies how to make some money.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Dr. Roslyn Clark, Artis, first female president of Benedict College. It's the Breakfast Club. Good morning.